All right, what did we decide on? Coffee and Relics? Hey everyone, welcome to Coffee and Relics. Of course, I am here with Steven. My name is Nick, and we are on our favorite set to talk about our favorite things, old guns, old historical items, and even better, both of our favorite part of this is answering your questions. How you doing today, Steven?
Fantastic.
Cheers.
Yes, sir.
There's definitely coffee in here. Let's just jump into it, because this one is really exciting.
So what we have here is a very, very cool piece. This is actually an M9130 PU sniper, an actual real deal one. But the cool thing about this one in particular is that it's not just a World War II PU sniper. It is actually a Vietnam bringback.
Yeah.
So that's what particularly makes this one really cool.
I think it's really cool, too, that you pointed out that you can tell that this is the real deal.
Absolutely.
Just by the way, like, this thing has been in the jungle.
Oh, 100%. You can tell there's like a nice like even patina across the entire thing of just not surface rust, but like corrosion over the years of literally being carried through the very 100% humidity jungle of Vietnam.
People think of old guns as being old and irrelevant, but then we see things like the current conflict in Ukraine, and you're seeing World War II era guns popping up even now. The idea that this was in Vietnam is pretty cool.
Especially because like you said, this rifle is still being used to this day. People see all these older scopes that have like sniper rifle by modern day standards with a 4X optic and they scoff at it, but these things are actually really quite capable.
Grandpappy has put a lot of deer in the freezer with a fixed 4-power scope.
Oh, 100%.
And this thing probably also put some things in the ground.
A lot of people have been put in the dirt thanks to 4-power optics, and even less than that.
What kind of sets this apart from your standard Mosin-Nagant that you would get at like Big 5?
So that's a very good question. A very popular thing at the time of World War II when these things were created is at the time there was no dedicated sniper platforms like we have now. So what they were used to doing back in the day was they would grab off-the-rack service weapons and they would just simply slap a scope on the most accurate one they can get their hands on, which at the time worked just fine. But for us in the CNR market that are we as collectors, it's actually kind of hard because sometimes you can find some of these in the wild that have actually been faked. Because like I said before, since these were made with standard service rifles, it's fairly easy to grab a random Mosin-Nagant and slap a scope on it. So there's a very few key features that you actually want to look for when identifying a real PU versus a run-of-the-mill Mosin.
Someone was saying earlier that there's a specific marking on the side of the receiver.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, absolutely. So most Mosin-Nagants, prior to actually being adopted as PU snipers, they went through what was called sniper selection. They were basically going through their existing inventory of rifles and finding out which ones had the best accuracy. You can actually still find Mosin-Nagants that actually were selected for the PU program but never actually got a scope. If you open up a Mosin-Nagant on the inside of the receiver, right about here, you'll find 2 holes where they were pre-drilled for the scope but never actually received one. Another thing you can do to tell is that once the rifles were adopted as PU snipers, they had an additional serial number written on the left side of the barrel. This was essentially their sniper selection number, which redesignated the rifle as a PU.
And what kind of people were given these rifles? Like, obviously snipers, but
Yeah.
As it was kind of the beginning of that era of the sniper, how were those people selected?
That's a good question. Frankly, every country had a different standard when it came to selecting their snipers. I'm sure the Soviet Union kind of had their own little thing where they found the peasant that had the best accuracy or who had experience with hunting. The whole tradition of grabbing the standard issued service weapon and actually turning that into a sniper rifle actually originated in World War I. 1903s being equipped with, at the time, like 1.5 power scopes, which was considered top tier technology for the day.
Yeah. That's about the equivalent of going like this.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Are there any other markings that, maybe not specifically for the PU sniper, but anything for the Mosin that maybe someone who's getting into collecting and really likes the Mosin should look for?
So the PU snipers, there's actually 2 big variations that you want to look for. So the more common PUs that you'll find on the market that are typically the more affordable ones are basically Ukrainian reworks. So the Ukrainians, God knows how many years ago, got a hold of a bunch of unfinished PU snipers. They're like, we got the parts, might as well make them. So they put them all together and sold them off as PU snipers, but there's slight differences between those guys and the actual been there, done that World War II era ones. Mostly that you're looking for is like marking styles on the scope and on the base itself. A lot of the bases for the original PU snipers are actually electro-penciled by hand to the individual gun. And then the scopes themselves, an easy way to spot a original versus, say, like a modern reproduction, is that the originals had roll stamps versus the modern ones have laser engravings. So if you spot one and it looks a little too clean, odds are it probably is not authentic. If you see one where the markings are kind of indented into the metal more so than anything, then you're probably looking at the real deal.
And this one is original, correct?
Yes, 100%.
We actually get quite a few Mosins coming through here at Old Steel Guns. If you are looking to collect a Mosin, make sure you hit us up on Gunbroker. Got a lot of cool stuff on there.
What makes this particular rifle incredibly awesome, that separates it from the run-of-the-mill, like, sometimes you stumble upon authentic PUs, and yeah, you can kind of guesstimate where the rifle's been just based off of year markings, etc. But what makes this one particularly cool is this guy right here. This one actually has documented import papers from the GI who brought this home from Vietnam.
Wow.
So that's by serial number specifically marked in the Vietnamese import papers.
And personally, that's very cool for me. My father-in-law served in Vietnam, so anytime I see something from Vietnam, you know, it just kind of connects you with those people you know who were around for that.
Absolutely.
And who went through those trials.
You just pick one of these up and it's just, yeah, you have it in your hands, but then you see a picture from 50 plus years ago of a person similar to our age holding the exact same gun, and you're like, wow, this thing's been around.
Yeah, and it reminds me how much I love my couch and not being in a swampy jungle.
Yes.
I think that we've kind of dived as deep into this as we can, and also I'm impatient and I want to get to my favorite part. So What do you say we answer some questions?
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
This is our Helmet of Knowledge, and that's where we answer your questions. That's your questions in the comments, direct messages on Instagram. Any questions that we get, we are here to answer. Shall we? Would you like to do the honors of the first one?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Let me give it a little whoosh. Let's see if we got a good one. What made the M1 Garand the greatest battle implement ever devised? That's a really good question.
That is a really good question. I mean, I guess the easiest way to put this is, well, because Patton said so. And that man can do no wrong. Well, maybe a couple things.
He did a couple things
Yeah,
wrong,
maybe a couple of things. But they made a movie about him, so he must be great. In your opinion, what would you say really made the Garand like that really powerful battlefield implement?
Yes.
Whew, need more coffee.
I want to say more than anything, it was just a matter of timing. The M1 Garand came out in a time where the entirety of the world was still on 5-round bolt actions. And the M1 comes out and it's a full power rifle, just like how everybody else is running, but you have more capacity and it's a semi-auto on a massive scale. Like prior to the M1, there were countries that adopted semi-autos, but in very small scales. You had like the Soviets with the SVT-40, you had the Germans with the Gewehr 43, etc. Nobody really truly adopted it in mass, and simply just the volume of fire increase you get from having every last individual infantryman with a semi-automatic rifle in a world full of bolt actions, I think that speaks for itself. Just with any new type of firearm or any new technology, the older generation is always going to be a little hesitant. When the M1 came out, a bunch of at the time, World War I veterans were like, oh no, it's going to be less accurate because it's semi-automatic. You need to have a good old 5-round 1903 Springfield to really get those accurate shots in. When in reality, that just wasn't the case. Yeah, you might have had a marginal change in accuracy by going to a semi-auto, but for the individual rifleman where all you really need is minute of bad guy, yeah, you kind of have to. So.
And as time has taught us, throughout the conflicts that have happened since that time, it really comes down to who has the most rounds on hand. And having 8 ready to go, self-ejecting clip, like all of that stuff 100%. Was extremely effective. All right, shall we do another?
Absolutely. Here.
What a gentleman. Pull from the bottom here. All right. Is gun collecting dying out with the older generation? What have you found? Have you seen things slow down recently as the older generation peters off?
Yes and no. What I've noticed, it comes in waves. So interest in certain niches of the collecting world come and go with time. Currently in this time of day, Civil War stuff is actually surprisingly cheap because the older generation that collected that stuff has unfortunately been getting older and slowly dying out. And the interest just doesn't get recouped, and thus price is lower. You're almost seeing a similar trend with like old Western stuff. The baby boomers grew up with all the Westerns on TV, And their entire collecting career, they was mostly focused on single action armies, lever actions, little side-by-side coach guns. All these guns that they grew up with and they saw on TV and emulated, they were enamored with them and they collected them, and now they're getting older, some of them are dying off, and well, now we're seeing those guns start dipping in value again. But like I said, it comes in waves. So as the Western stuff goes down, a new generation comes in to take its place. And now we have the generation like you and me that grew up on movies like Black Hawk Down, played Call of Duty growing up. Like, we're starting to see a bunch of really cool guns from our childhood starting to go up and up in price to astronomical levels, because the collector market is also growing in that particular direction.
Those older generations saying things like, oh, you know, video games, rah, 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 rah.
Yep.
But really, you picked the guns that you liked based on the movies that you saw
100%.
and, you know, watching Gunsmoke on TV. That show is massive. So media brings people here, and I think that's always a good thing. I was working at a gun shop, and there was a guy who used to come in all the time, and he had at least one of every Glock that had ever come out.
Wow.
I know. So to a lot of people, they're like, oh, whatever, you know, Glock, who cares? It's just a plastic gun. But fast forward 20 years from now, and those things are going to be highly collectible.
Oh, 100%.
They're already starting.
Hell, we're reaching a point in time where even Generation 1 Glocks are becoming CNRs, or at least they will be in the next like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, we'll throw this in our imaginary trash can.
Totally not full of trash down there. Let's see. Got it upside down. What CNR gun surprised you the most when you shot it?
Yeah, I haven't shot a lot of CNR guns. I would say what surprised me the most was the intense recoil of the 54R when it is the second gun you've ever fired.
Oh yeah, yeah, not particularly, not a particularly smooth shooter to get you started on.
No, I mean I hit.
Depends on which category. If you're talking about in the world of NFA, by all means, MP40. The MP40 has been my favorite machine gun ever to shoot. That gun has such a nice low recoil and such a slow rate of fire, where it's that chugga 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 chugga. It's just incredibly controllable and so fun to shoot.
All right. Are there clubs or groups for young collectors?
I want to say dependent on location. Thankfully, we live in the world of modern technology, and we have things like Facebook, for example, where you can join a lot of these Facebook groups that are just full of like-minded collectors. Even though you might not find a physical club, although they're out there, don't get me wrong, they are out there. But for the guy that's in the middle of nowhere, you can find one of those communities very easily online.
And the good thing about people in the middle of nowhere is they have a lot of time and they do a lot of research. I have learned so much from random people on the internet. I mean, you have to be careful because sometimes
Take
people
everything with
just
a grain
say
of salt.
things. Yeah, exactly. If we can date on the internet, you can find other collectors
Absolutely.
on the internet.
Absolutely.
Get out there. You guys are better at Google than I am.
Go touch some grass.
Yeah. Do the
Let's
honors.
see. Give me a little whoosh. Okay, what do we got? How do I check if a gun is safe to shoot?
Well, that's a very simple and very complicated answer.
The law requires that I tell you to take it to a gunsmith.
Yes, not Bubba, but an actual gunsmith.
Not the guy you know that has built 3 ARs in his garage haphazardly.
Yes.
A real gunsmith.
As someone who is a real gunsmith and who spent a lot of time as an armorer, what are some signs that are right off the bat you know this gun is not safe?
Cracks in the barrel. Very big ones.
Yes.
You want to look for very obvious signs. Obviously, you want to look for massive cracks in the barrel. If it's a kind of like a break open shotgun, if you hold it like this and it goes tick 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 tick, and it's not all tight, probably should get that looked at. Big one for revolvers, timing. Timing is a massive one, especially on old guns. A lot of the old Smiths are like perfectly fine. Their quality is there, so they don't really fall too drastically out of timing. However, if you get these little like Spanish copies, all these like off-brand revolvers from back in the day, sometimes you like cock the cylinder and the bullet's like halfway out of the chamber, and well, you don't want to send it on a bullet that's partially out of the chamber.
Yeah, especially on an older gun where the firing pin is on the hammer, you're going to break that firing pin.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you check timing on a revolver?
You pull the hammer back, and once you click all the way to the rear, at which point you want to like move your thumb ever so slightly. So if you move your thumb slightly and nothing happens, and it's locked where it should be, congratulations, your timing's in order. If you can move it in and out of space, once that is fully done, congratulations, your revolver's out of timing and probably needs to get looked at by a gunsmith.
Pulling the hammer back and checking is after the gun is unloaded.
If you don't know what you're doing, take it to a professional. Cannot be safe enough with firearms.
Cool, man. Well, that was a good batch of questions. Make sure you guys are putting more questions in the comments. These have been collected over some time, but we'd like to keep these things pretty current.
Absolutely.
So ask and we shall answer. We'll see you guys around.
Cheers. Delicious air.
Oh, delicious Colombian air. Is this the air that cat creature poops out and that
Yes.
makes the real expensive coffee?
Oh.